Since the dawn of time, man has been curious. And for almost as long, the Vibes Broadcast Network has sought the truth. Investigate, discuss, explore. Okay, maybe in other episodes, but this one is just listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very privileged to have Mr. Patrick Bristow here. And we're going to have a nice conversation. I told my kids that he was coming on today, and they were all excited because they saw him on a little show called The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody.
Yep.
And I think I remember you from Austin Powers.
Yeah, I had a little cameo in that a little bit. I was the tour guide at the VirtueCon headquarters.
You've done some voiceover acting as well, right?
A little bit of animation voiceover, yeah. King of the Hill, some early Family Guys, this and that.
I love Family Guy, although I haven't seen it in quite a while.
Yeah.
But how did you get into this business?
Well, I think I was always attracted to it, even as a kid. My parents had been stage actors in Los Angeles in the late 40s. Okay. And so, the photo albums were, filled with their curtain call photos and their headshots and stuff. So I was very attracted to it, did school plays and that kind of thing. By high school, I focused on the clarinet, of all things. That was what I thought my profession was going to be. And I studied with a local, very good teacher. And my dad got me a quality instrument and I was really all about it. But then senior year, I did a part in the musical, the spring musical at my high school. And that kind of the bug kind of rebit me then. And so I changed my major that summer, going into college, to theater. My parents had kept me out of anything professional as a kid. I grew up in LA. So, I went to school with kids that were pros that you'd see on commercials, or even, Christy McNichol in my middle school. But when we were approached, by agents, because I was, a red-haired kid, and that was the big thing in the 70s. I wanted to do it, but my parents were like, no, we're not putting you into that yet. And I'm glad they didn't. I wouldn't have been probably up to all the stresses and the pressures and the mind games that, this business has as part of it. As a kid, I was barely up to it in my 20s. I'm barely up to it now. But college theater and then doing little plays here and there, and thinking I wanted to be a musical theater person, studying voice, and then thinking I wanted to be an opera singer and studying classical voice. And somewhere around my mid-20s, I discovered that I really, really loved doing improv. And there weren't as many schools around as there are now. Like, you throw a rock in any city and there's an improv school. But back in the day in LA, there were just a couple, and the Groundlings was known as the one to go to. So I auditioned there, and again, bit by that specific bug. And I just basically devoted the next, 4 to 7 years of my life to improv and sketch. And that led to getting seen by casting directors, who then brought me into audition for small parts in TV and film. And, one thing led to another. Okay. Long process.
Well, if I got into improv, I'd be like Michael Scott on The Office.
Oh, what? I don't think I saw that.
Oh, you haven't seen it? Oh my gosh! So he does.
I've got friends on that episode actually, but I haven't seen it.
He does the same character for every improv he does.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant the episode they did where they went and took an improv class. Yeah, there are people that have kind of one winning persona that they use throughout all their improv work, and it works great for them, And there are some people that like to be chameleons and just change their body, their voice, their mind, their emotions, their soul, for every chance they get. And there's different types of improvisers, So just because you think that you might have one go-to characterization, that shouldn't preclude you from pursuing it if you want.
Well, so is that kind of how you perceive yourself, as a chameleon, able to change that character up all the time, or you kind of have a certain style that you go with?
At the Groundlings, I really enjoyed mixing it up. I really enjoyed the possibilities of just changing everything. I was a really gawky, ginger, skinny, gay guy. And so the chance to play something outside of that was really liberating. You know, improv was the only place that I was going to be able to play, you know, the well-built Studley stable boy who the lady of the house is interested in. It was the only place I was going to do that. And so I had fun with the liberation of playing characters that I would never get cast in. But in my professional life, you know, they tend to kind of pigeonhole you, and I don't think of that as a bad thing. I have like a couple different colors that I play. There's kind of bitchy and acerbic. There's very enthusiastic and a little oblivious.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this kind of academic and dry. And those are kind of the three colors I typically get cast in.
Well, you know, like with Will Smith, he could play different parts, but he's kind of that same smart aleck, kind of quirky guy. Ryan Reynolds, the same thing. You know, he could play different characters, but he's always that smart aleck. But it's for some people that works. You know, if you can be more diverse, then I guess you would be more apt to get the better roles. What's been like the most challenging role for you?
Well, the most challenging actually in recent memory would be an episode of Criminal Minds I did, where I played the long lost son of Frances Fisher, which is kind of weird because I don't think she's much older than me. But he was described as having autism or being on the Asperger's spectrum. And I have a nephew who is autistic. And I got the part, and I had prepared for the audition. But I had to double down when I got the part, and had like about a week to really prepare it, because I didn't want to make cliche mistakes. You know, I didn't want to be an exhibit A and like, here's what not to do when playing a character with autism. So that was probably the most challenging and the most different, and yet it's not that different. I mean, I'm using my own voice. I'm using, you know, my own face. We didn't Lon Chaney me up into another person or something like that. I'm not a brunette. But yeah, that was probably the biggest departure I've had in a long time. And it came with a real sense of responsibility. You know, I got some good feedback, but who knows how that performance will age.
But what do you have going on now?
Right now is kind of a quiet period, but I'm loving it. Just staying at home. I did an NCIS in December that will probably air sometime, maybe late February, March. That was fun. And I've got a project with the Jim Henson Company for the last 15 years called Puppet Up Uncensored. And it's a live improv puppet variety show, basically. We do improvised sketches, we do some choreographed and set pieces, musical stuff, and I'm the director and host of that. So we just came off a very intense 6 weeks at Knott's Scary Farm during the Halloween season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're their resident act in the big theater there. And we do 3 shows a night, 4 nights a week, so 12 shows a week. They're only 35 to 40-minute shows, but they're exhausting and so much fun. And I have a rotating cast of puppeteer improvisers who come and go through that month. So there's a lot of offstage work and onstage work to do for that job. And then, of course, the morning show, I did that last year, and that season has been airing, and just got some really nice nominations. And that was a lot of fun to, you know, play stuff closer to the best, not the broader comedy that I'm known for. And that has gotten increasingly less attractive to me as I've gotten older. it takes so much energy and everything like that. I kind of like actually being able to relax into, a character as opposed to having to amp up for it.
Yeah.
So that's basically the last 6 months, last year in a nutshell.
I really liked the morning show. I wasn't sure how it was going to be, and then I started watching. Like, I got addicted to it.
Yeah, right. When I auditioned for it, they sent me the audition with a fake name for the show.
Really?
Yeah, so I think so they can keep leaks from getting out, right?
Yeah.
So I was auditioning for this show. I didn't know what it was. I taped the audition here at home, sent it via email, forgot about it, and then got it, and it was, potentially recurring. And when they reached out, it was the morning show, and I was like, oh, I heard of this. Then I watched it, and then I went, holy wow, I've got to step it up here. And I got to do 4 episodes in the second season. They are coming back for a 3rd season. I don't know that my character will. I don't think there's a place for him. But if it does, that would be fantastic. If it doesn't, it was a great ride. But really fun to work with actors of that caliber and directors of that caliber and writing of that caliber. Just a really great experience, and to be doing it during COVID when there wasn't much work to be had anywhere else.
Yeah.
We were tested every day, masked, until camera was rolling, then the masks would come off, then they go right back on. We lost a few days to COVID scares because somebody tested positive somewhere in the crew.
Right.
We were divided into zones. If you were an actor or needed to be intimately on the set, like makeup or the cameraman or director, you were zone A. Then next people are zone B, and you didn't mix. So they had really good protocols. And again, it was just a blessing during that time when there was no other work really to be had to get something of that level.
Yeah. I long for the day when we don't have to talk about COVID anymore.
Right.
But I want to get back to the puppet show. Before I do that, what is it like preparing for an audition, doing a video at home and sending it off? I mean, I know most folks ought to be, I don't know, is it more comfortable to do it at home or to do it in person? How's that process work?
It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but I do really like doing them from home. There are challenges, technical challenges, obviously. I don't do them with this background. It's too distracting. So, I've painted certain walls, certain colors, and I take the pictures off them, or we have one, long window, and I get all the curtains divided just nice and evenly as a background. Bringing lamps in and stuff like that, to make it look right. So there's the challenges of that, getting someone to read with you, which in my case is usually my husband. And he'll do it. He's very good at it, but he doesn't particularly like to do it. The advantages are you send in what you feel is a representative take. Whereas if you go in the room, sometimes you have one shot at it. And if you fumble a little bit, or your nerves maybe kept some of the color out of the performance, or your nerves made you go a little too fast for the character, you may or may not get a chance to do it again. Sometimes they'll say, yeah, let's do it again and try this. You get a redirect, which is, always wonderful, but casting directors do not always have that time. And sometimes they or the producers just, they've seen what they've seen. You're not the guy. Thank you. Whereas this, I can, I can do 4 or 5 takes, choose the one that feels right and put it out and feel good about that. So there's not that drive home going, oh,
Well, the reason why I wondered, because I mean, you have a director there that might say, hey, I want to see you do it this way. I mean, I guess they give you instructions when they send you the casting call, but
yeah, you're given some, description of the character, sometimes a reminder of what the tone is of the project if it's an established show. If it is an established show, you can go on YouTube and, see some examples and go, I see what the tone is. That can be very helpful. When it's a project where you don't have any reference, you're guessing based on the writing, based on who's in it, based on the director, based on just your gut instincts, and you don't necessarily get that redirect from a director or a producer to help get you closer to what they want. So again, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah, everything's got its ups and downs.
But I like the fact that I can audition without wearing pants and it doesn't disturb anyone. My husband.
So back to the puppet show.
Back to the puppet show.
Back to the puppet show.
He started talking about himself not wearing pants. Back to the puppet show.
That's a typical Zoom meeting from what I understand. But no, when it comes to the puppet show, is that like a child's type of show, or is it an adult?
Oh, it's an adult show.
So it must get pretty raunchy then.
Sometimes, our guiding principle is that we don't endeavor to be raunchy, because that would make the whole thing just kind of cheap.
Yeah.
But we allow it in as intelligent a way as we can pull it off when the audience clearly wants to see something in a scene. I say, like, these two characters are breaking up. Why? And they give me maybe an adult reason for that breakup. We will endeavor to do it in a way that, doesn't go into X, but is definitely, what's that other rating? NC-17. We really try to mete out the F-bombs, the language, the gratuitous stuff. It gets old very fast. So the audience might think they really want to see that, but we're going to give them our smartest version of it. And at the end of the day, they do seem to appreciate that extra effort. But no, our show is not recommended for kids. And sometimes we've done it in places where they will absolutely not let anyone under 16 in, because of that particular venue's rules. So yeah, it's interesting. It started as just a class that I taught at the Jim Henson Company. Brian Henson, Jim's son, brought me in to teach improv to the puppeteers, just so they'd have that skill set in their quiver.
Right.
And they took to it very well, and we were having so much fun doing it. And it got a little bit blue at times and a little bit dark and subversive. And that was really fun. When you see, a bunch of cute puppets that are robbing a bank and taking people hostage and being badasses, it's kind of funny. It's funnier than in real life, because that's not a funny situation. But puppets get away with murder, literally. And Brian said that, when the cameras weren't rolling, his dad and Frank Oz and all those people, they ad-libbed a lot. And a lot of it was not what people would associate with Jim Henson, because they immediately think of, the Muppet Show, family friendly, though subversive. Or Sesame Street, family friendly, kid friendly.
Yes.
But that's not the core of what was Jim's sensibility and sense of humor. His core was puppets behaving badly, violence. In fact, the first title of the Muppet Show when he pitched it was Sex and Violence with the Muppets.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yep. And it turned into what it turned into, and it was only in England that a network got behind it before it got distribution statewide, as I understand it. But that subversive, violent, naughty kind of teasing humor is very evident in some of Jim's early work, and his wife, Jane Henson, who, is kind of an unsung hero. She was a huge part of all of the Henson efforts. She brought a wicked sense of humor in as well. And I was glad that I got to meet her before she passed, and that she saw our show and she gave it her blessing, because, that was very important to get. And he had ideas for it, and was a big fan of it. So anyway, that's how the show started. It started as a class, then we did a little demonstration, some festivals saw it, they brought us in, and it just evolved very organically and naturally into a show.
No. Well, And I don't want to make the tone seem sad, but I grew up watching Sesame Street, and then
Sure.
you know, before I became a teenager is when the Muppet Show came on, and I see like my grandkids will watch the new Sesame Street, and like, yeah, it's nothing like what it was when I was a kid. I get sentimental at times.
Yeah.
My grandmother and grandfather, they got to live into their late 90s, and they passed away, and I've I still find myself now, at being a grandpa myself, just getting sentimental about all that stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't do you get that feeling? I mean, that's, to me, it's like it gets worse the older I get.
I haven't fallen into anything maudlin yet, but I know that's coming. But yeah, I do get touched a little bit more easily now that, certain defenses from earlier adulthood have faded away. And in our show, we have a couple very nostalgic pieces. It's one is Java, the piece with the two dancing tubes that Frank Oz created. And the other one is I've Grown Accustomed to Your Face, which Jim Henson created and performed with Jane Henson. And that originally had Kermit in a wig with pearls and this weird demon head that is trying to eat him as he's singing, or lip syncing rather, to I've Grown Accustomed to Your Face by Rosemary Clooney. And we recreated those pieces for our puppet show, Puppet Up Uncensored. And I've seen them hundreds of times now with different puppeteers playing the parts. Everyone from Brian Henson himself to brand new puppeteers who are only 23 years old. And every time that music starts and the lights fade up on the piece, I don't know, I just get this kind of warm heart chakra, not to get too Eastern here, sense of connection to those pieces that hadn't been seen by live audiences for decades until we brought them back. So yeah, there's a certain sentiment around some of the puppets that many of which are very old and have been refurbished so many times. There's probably barely a thread left of the original puppet that were on TV shows and pilots and things from the 70s. And so, you take one of those puppets and you see the old label in it that says Jim Henson Company, and it's the label is faded and stained and has been sewn in and out so many times, and it has the original name written in Sharpie of what that character was. There's a definite nostalgic connection to the early years of this world that I have been just very lucky, very blessed to be a small part of.
I guess it's almost like you finally have to say, I'm not a child anymore. When you experience those things, like when my grandparents passed, it's like my childhood is gone. I remember just growing up there, and that was my connection to my childhood. I live through my grandkids now.
Yeah, but don't you get like any kind of flashes, like when you see a picture or an item or something, or think of a certain memory that that kind of give you that satisfied memory, like you can almost like a dessert you had years ago that you haven't had in ages, and you can still remember what the taste was like. It's a ghost of it, but it's still there. And
yeah, I do. I learned how to cook gravy from my grandmother.
Oh my God, great.
That was my favorite breakfast, was biscuits and gravy.
I'll bet.
When I moved out on my own, I said, Grandma, you have to teach me how to make it, so I always have gravy. And so when I make it now, that I remember those mornings, getting up early on a Saturday morning, go watch cartoons, and Grandma brings in sausage patty and biscuits and gravy. I think about all the times that I used to spend summers over there. My grandpa would buy piles of sand that he would spread out over the yard, but he'd leave it up all summer long so we could go out and play, our little army men or cars and things like that.
Yeah. Those little green plastic guys.
But I went back home some months ago, and mind you, the old house, it got so bad they had to tear it down and they built a new one there. and my mother still lives there. And I'll go and I'll look out over the backyard, and there used to be nothing but trees as far as you could see. And somebody had bought up the property behind them, and they had cut down almost all of them. So now you can see through them, and you see this trailer park and all.
No.
And I just teared up. You know, that's like a part of me was just destroyed. It sounds sad, but yeah, that's the way I felt at that moment.
I get it. You know, I've driven back to see from the street to see houses that, you know, I used to live in. And sometimes there's a great familiar feeling. Sometimes there's kind of like that's just a box.
Yeah, true.
And why did they paint it that color?
Oh my God, the house I grew up in,
Yeah.
the people that bought it, they painted it Pepto-Bismol pink.
Oh no, they might be colorblind like my husband and I, because he painted 20 some odd years ago, he painted a kitchen at our house where we lived at the time, Pepto-Bismol pink, and the cupboards were blue. So you walked into that kitchen and it was an assault. So maybe they, like my husband, saw the color and went, oh, it's a neutral. It's called bisque. But they meant by bisque was tomato or lobster bisque. I came home from shooting Showgirls of all things to that kitchen. So I was away and he goes, I painted the kitchen. I was like, oh no, what did you paint? He goes, don't worry, it's called bisque. And this was before cell phones where you could take a picture and show me.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
You know, what's really stupid is when I was growing up, I don't care what was on, nothing ever fazed me. But now I can watch something like The Office and they get to the last season and everybody's saying goodbye. And all of a sudden I start tearing up. And I'm like, it's a damn TV show. Why am I crying over a stupid TV show?
Oh, because you're human and you're relating and there's nothing in the way now, you know? I think I look at it as a form of maturity, frankly. You know, that when we can be moved and not ashamed of it and maybe even surprised by it, I don't look at that remotely as a failing or a loss of stoicism or something. I look at the kind of the earlier life stoicism as a little bit of an act and an armor and maybe an inability, you know? So I say just invest in Kleenex and allow yourself to be moved. All right, that's my. I'm going to charge you for that now.
I don't have to go to therapy, but you're going to charge me anyway.
Oh yeah, I'm charging you, and I'm not network, so you're screwed.
Darn it!
I don't have a license either, so you're screwed.
Did you ever have that kind of experience when you left the show?
Oh, that emotional experience?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time when I left a show, we didn't know we were leaving. You know, like you just get canceled. Last days, you know, I think it's been a while since I had one where I knew it was like a last day.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting if that happens again to see, you know, how I feel. But no, usually I've been pretty businesslike about it. Oh, you know, there have been a few projects where there was a speech backstage before the thing, and you know, the cast thanked me or something like that, where I got, you know, moved and actually cried, which proved to them I wasn't a witch, which is very distressing because I like them to think I'm a witch. But once I cried, then they know I'm not a witch. So so yeah, it's happened, but I haven't had much cause recently. So it'll be interesting to see if the waterworks flow and I get all choked up and verklempt next time it's a last day of school kind of a situation.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like my last job. I was there for 13 years. My last day, I was just like, sayonara. Couldn't wait to get out. I do miss some of those folks, though. You know, you get attached to people. It's basically family away from home.
Oh yeah, and some casts and some classes and some groups, are just a little extra special. They just really are. And oddly, I haven't been in touch with some people from some of those experiences. It was a moment in time. We did a play. It ran for 4 months. It was your family during that time, and I've kept in touch through Facebook. Thank God for that. But will we actually see each other in person again? I don't know. Especially, less in the last couple of years. But it was a moment in time.
Yeah. I understand that. Okay. Another question popped into my head.
As we both dissolve into tears.
But has there been any obstacles that you had to come over? I mean, to overcome to get where you are?
Sure. Some of them are the garden variety ones, and some are specific, I think, to me. I try to counsel my students, especially my younger students, or the ones who've been at it a while and haven't really met with success. I say, it's a different path for everyone. And I'll tell them about people I was at the Groundlings with who were brilliant, and whose time didn't come until a little bit later in life. They had to grow into how they sounded, how they looked, and they had to grow into the fashion of what was being cast. Because make no mistake, TV and film, and probably to a degree playwriting, is the characters are created in a fashion.
Yeah.
And for a period of time, for female lead characters to have a gay male assistant or secretary was the fashion. For a period of time after Revenge of the Nerds, to have, kind of scrawny, nerdy looking guys in your commercial was the fashion. And I fit the bill at that time. I also didn't fit the bill when I was trying to do musical theater, and I didn't blend in very well because, again, I had this effulgent, radioactive, bright red hair, and occasionally somebody would cast me in spite of it, and I'd either be wigged or I'd have to put a rinse in, or occasionally it worked. And but it was so a challenge was I couldn't look like everybody's brother or son.
Right.
I didn't fit into a lot of family casting. In fact, in my entire career, I've rarely played a family member. I've almost always been in a professional environment in all these years. I hardly ever play a brother, a son, or a dad, or even an uncle or a cousin. So, that was one of the things where I had to kind of realize, all right, slow your roll here, Bristow. Be patient. You don't exactly fit the mold today, but you did a while back, and maybe as you get older, you'll fit a different mold. And that is kind of what's happened in the last few years. I find myself going in for more academics and more, just almost like executives, judges, and the like, as my coloring, my age, my face, everything has changed. So obstacles, yeah. And then also, there were obstacles I put in front of myself, like playing straight characters that were involved with female characters in the text. Sometimes I'd be like, I don't know that I can pull this off. And in some cases I could, but then once I was established, it's like, well, who's going to believe it if I don't? And so it depends on the script, but there are some obstacles that, like, yeah, I'll just get in my own head and think like, I don't think I can do this. And so that's an obstacle. Yeah, obstacles are part of pursuing a creative commercial career. By commercial, I don't mean commercials. I mean, just business.
Right.
You are a puzzle piece. You have a certain pattern and a color and a shape.
True.
And either you fit exactly what they're looking for, or they're willing to change the shapes around you to make you fit. So every opportunity isn't yours. So every loss isn't a tragedy. Every time you don't get the role, it's not another chip away at your ego, or it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So the inner game is something that I had to learn to play early. Had to learn to play honestly with myself, not bullshit myself. And it's what I try to gift my students with.
Right.
So that they have, hope, but some realistic, ideas of the path ahead of them.
Believe it or not, I interviewed an actor and I asked him the same question. And he said, no, everything's always come easy for me. Never had to come over.
Good for him.
Get over it. I'm like, okay, well, that kind of
Great.
that kind of ruined the moment.
Moving on to the next question. My follow-up would be like, why do you think that is?
I should have thought of that.
And I've known some people who just seem to have grace. I don't know what it is, but the audition gods and the writing gods and the producer director gods just seem to make them fit everywhere. And they are the kind of people sometimes who don't blow a lot of auditions. They're just always in that kind of great zone where they're up for anything. They're well prepared. They're not letting their nerves getting the best of them. They're well trained. They continue their training. They have a very affable general personality. Their anatomy, facial anatomy is appealing and fits a variety of characters. Their vibe is right. And things seem to just fall into place for them. They might tell you otherwise, but it looks that way from the outside. And also, to be fair, I have had a lot of things just unfold for me. Offers to do parts where I didn't have to audition, parts that were written for me. There have been sometimes where I auditioned and it was just like they could not find the person they wanted. They could not find the person they wanted. I came in, was very specific with my voice, my look, my energy, and they went, that'll do. And I got to, I got to fill a difficult part for them to fill, not because I was brilliant or anything, but because they were literally at that point with, we need to get someone to play this part. We've seen these others, they haven't done it. Yeah, this guy, he's so specific, we'll just make the part him. And then they can tick that off their to-do list and move on. So I have had the very things came easily to me kind of experiences, and I've had I had to work really hard to get them. Both.
Anything ever just happened by accident?
Yes. Absolutely.
I love those stories.
Absolutely. And then I've had the heartbreak of something that worked out, and then you get the call like, hey, they rewrote the script and they cut your part out.
Oh gosh.
Or, and this one's fun. You get hired, you gave a great audition, they loved you, you get hired, you go to work, and then after about a day, this is usually on TV where they can do it. That doesn't happen on film so much. They go, yeah, this isn't working. And you get let go and replaced. So I am in that club, but I'm in good company. Lots of great people have been fired. And not because I showed up drunk or I was late or I, threw punches on the set, just because, yeah, he was funny in the audition, but this isn't working, and that's happened a couple times.
You ever had those things that pop up where I just cannot work with this person?
Yeah, but what choice do you have?
You just go with the flow, huh?
Yeah. And part of the great thing about having done improv a lot is you improvise with a lot of people, and improv requires trust and respect for it really to work. You have to trust who you're with and you have to respect them. And if actually off stage you don't trust them, they're a little bit of a sketchy character, they play mind games or they're gossipy or whatever, and you're like, I don't really trust you. Or you don't respect them because, hey, I think while we were improvising, I smelled liquor on your breath, and
oh yeah,
come on, what's going on here? Or you don't trust them because they don't listen and they don't take care of their scene partners, and they're kind of a little bit narcissistic in their improv. You still have to give those people the trust and respect, or it won't work.
Yeah. Well,
so you start just trusting the process, and you go, I'm going to survive this. You give them the respect of, this is another human being who is trying to do what I'm trying to do, and we're trying to do this probably for the audience. Maybe they're only trying to do it for themselves, but I have to give them that for the time that we're working together. And sometimes it's transformative, and your fears were for naught. They turned out to be absolutely lovely. And then sometimes people live up to your worst expectations and are very difficult, and it's hard.
Yeah, well, I was a supervisor for many a year, and I had guys that just did not want to work together. I'm like, look, you have to be with them here at work. Just get the job done. It's not like you got to go home with them at night.
Yeah, you don't have to make out with them.
Right. You know, if it was something that came up where they were going to cause harm, okay, that's a different story. But you know, you did have those guys that would come to work with alcohol on their breath and stuff like that. I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to work with that person either. That's dangerous not only to them but to you as well.
Sure, absolutely. And disrespectful to, you know, an audience, or
Very.
to the ultimate goal of whatever the job is. You know, it's putting a team together is its own art, and sometimes we have control over that and sometimes you don't. I guess if you were a supervisor, if you were involved in the hiring process, you might have had some hand in it, but you might have also, I'm guessing, just inherited, like, here's your staff, right?
That's what happened to me. I very seldom got to be in on the hiring process.
Oh, that's unfortunate, because as the supervisor, like the director,
mm-hmm.
you're the one who's going to be the most affected by how well they mesh and work together. And that's hard.
Most of the time they were just being kids. You know, you got grown ass adults acting like little kids.
I know there have been times where I feel like a middle school teacher, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here?
I do like I used to do with my kids. When they would act up, I'd make them sit and hug each other until they got over it.
Oh my God, that's great.
Or get a big giant shirt and put them in a big shirt and make them sit there until they got over it.
And you can't do that with your employees. You will get taken to HR. He put both of us in a shirt.
They'll put
made us hug.
They'll put me in that jacket with the sleeves in the back.
Oh, a straight jacket? You will get in trouble. See? It's not what it used to be when you could put your employee in a straight jacket or make them hug.
So if you had some advice to give someone that they don't necessarily have to be getting into acting, I mean, just trying to be successful, what would you tell them?
I would tell them, I think what I learned a little bit early, and I continued to learn repeatedly, is you are your instrument, no matter what it is that you're pursuing, whether it's violin, acting, being a doctor. You are your instrument, and you have to learn your instrument that did not come with an owner's manual.
Right.
And the more honest you can be with yourself about every single process that goes through your emotions and your mind as you're striving to learn, as you're actually doing the work, is important. You have to know what voice inside your head maybe needs to be quieted and sent for a timeout in the corner, put in a straitjacket, you know, and which voice in your head to listen to and when, because the one that you straitjacket at the moment might be the one you need to listen to tomorrow. But negativity, outward comparisons, unhealthy competition, unhealthy self-talk, and unhealthy expectations will ruin what can be very joyous. And, you know, I didn't become a star, which I think I wanted to be when I was 18 or 19. And I'm glad of it. I'm glad I didn't. I sure would love that bank account that some of them have, you know? but no, the 18 or 19-year-old me that wanted something really badly wasn't my best self. He was the best I could do at that age. So I've learned to change expectations, to not cry foul when something doesn't work out in my favor, to yes and, which is a big thing in improv, to accept the reality in front of you and move forward by adding to it, by building upon it. That's the and of yes and, right? I accept this as reality in front of me, and I have a responsibility to link to it and to further it. that's the way now that, I try to live my life. And if the reality is something I don't like, then it's like, well, can I change it? Can I get around it? Can I incorporate it? Can I, I have to accept that it's there, that I didn't get that job, or it didn't turn out to be this. And now the ball is in my court on how I'm going to proceed. And by continually remembering that, I never feel like, at the whims of an uncaring universe. I'm really aware when something wonderful happens, that how lucky am I? And when something doesn't, maybe I dodged a bullet. There was a movie that I really wanted to be in years ago, and I auditioned. I had like 7 auditions for it. I've never had that many like auditions for a part. And the movie was called The Frighteners, and it was directed by Peter Jackson before he was really big. But I knew his work, and I really wanted to be in it. And another guy got the part ultimately, and he was great in it. He was just perfect for it. But I wanted that part. I worked really hard at every single audition. My last audition, Michael J. Fox was in the room, and he was very sweet. But I had just come off of an 18 to 19-hour day working on Showgirls that went into the morning. So I basically threw cold water on my face. My husband drove me because I was no condition to drive, and I went to that last audition, and it wasn't good, and I didn't get it. And I felt really bad about that. A week later, my dad got really sick and was in the hospital. No, it wasn't a week later. I'm sorry. About a month later, when they were shooting the film in New Zealand, my dad got really sick and was in the hospital. And I was doing a pilot in LA. So because of the TV schedule, I was able to drive back and forth between the desert where my parents lived and where I had to shoot this friggin' pilot. But my dad ultimately passed away a week later or 10 days later. And I thought, man, if I'd gotten that film, I would have been stuck in New Zealand. They wouldn't have been able to change the shooting schedule for me to get home, probably.
Right.
I wouldn't have been able to have been home for all that time to support my mom, to be present during that time where I needed to be where I needed to be. I ended up getting another job, which was helpful because that's how we make insurance in our union, by working.
Right.
And that was the pilot that I coincidentally had to shoot the day my dad actually passed. But the minute I was done, I was able to drive home. But had the me that wanted that part so bad through those 7 auditions and felt so bad after that 7th or 8th one, that exhausted morning in the room with Michael J. Fox, had I gotten it, it would have been a very different and not very good story. So when things elude me now, I don't know what the bullet is that I've dodged. And I don't grieve over it, because I don't know what the future holds, what I should do, what I shouldn't do. I'll just yes and what is coming.
That's right. I've always preached that everything happens for a reason. The people that come in your life, or there's no accident to the people that come into your life. Just, you have to take every situation and look for the positive to it.
Yes, and that's a very in the moment, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
If someone doesn't, let's say, and I think I'm with you that I believe that everyone comes into your life for a reason, but if someone doesn't believe that, they still can reverse engineer that. This person is in my life, and maybe there wasn't a reason to send them in or me into theirs, but they're here now, and there is a potential for this to be significant, impactful, and right. And that's the improv thing too. It's like, okay, you're here, let's make it a reason.
That's right.
And it can be very small and something you don't realize until much later. You think back and you go, thank God I met that person. Thank God that person just took me aside and said that one thing to me that one day.
Even if it's in passing. I mean, even the people that are toxic that I come across, yes. I might find something in them that I don't want to be, and I won't be that. Mm-hmm. So there's always some kind of reason for people that you come across, always.
Yeah, absolutely. Or there's an opportunity for you to learn, like, I don't want to be that. Or that person really brought up something in me. What is that? Mm-hmm. Again, examining these moments. And that's a good thing I think about studying acting. maybe more than improv, or I don't know, I shouldn't have said that. Studying any kind of art where you are your instrument is you have the opportunity to really get to know yourself, not in a self-love narcissistic way, but in a way to help you operate better in your daily life, your interactions with people, your overarching life's work or purpose, if you even isolated that, which you don't have to, I don't think. But by knowing yourself, learning your owner's manual, it just makes things so much less effortful, less mystifying. I know full well why I can't be a professional bowler. I know full well.
Well, I know why I never became a professional singer.
Okay.
I have to sing first, so that was a factor.
That rules that out. But, let's say you really loved singing and you just wanted to sing and maybe not be a professional. Would you have given yourself the gift and have the courage to go like, I'm going to take some lessons. I'm going to do some ear training.
Why not?
Right.
I tell people, even if you can't sing and you want to, even if it's in your car, whatever, just do it.
Yeah. Our culture, other cultures, sing as a matter of fact, and it's just part of life. And for some reason, I don't know if it's strictly American or it's Western or English or where it comes from, but there's this kind of like, don't sing unless you're good.
Hey, what is it? Karen Carpenter said, just sing a song.
Loud.
Well, okay. And when we talk about how, you take whatever situation comes to your life, you can make something positive out of it.
Yeah.
Mind you, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I told you that before we got started that, I have a spinal problem and I became disabled. And so it motivated me to get more into podcasting and reaching out and just talking to people. And I have made some of the best friends doing this that I would have never met before if I hadn't just reached out to them.
Wow.
So
great.
Here's this situation. Okay, so what? I can't do the same things I used to do before, but it's gave me the opportunity to meet people that I would have never met before.
Uh-huh.
So you can find something positive in everything.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And even things that seem the most negative can, down the road, 2 steps, yield something positive. I think that's great. I think also you didn't just go, oh, my back is jacked up and that's it. You found something else to do. You yes-anded life.
Yeah. My grandfather, he got it in an accident at work back in the mid 60s. And anyway, him and another fellow was welding and they were in a cherry picker and it fell and he was paralyzed from the waist down. Anyway, he stumbled when he walked, but he taught himself to walk again. He was supposed to be in a wheelchair, but I mean, like I say, he would stumble, but he still walked. And I got the attitude from him. And the funny story is my grandmother taking him to the doctor, and they were walking down the hallway, and I say he stumbled a little bit, and this lady came up to my grandmother and said, "Is he drunk?" And my grandpa heard him. She didn't think my grandpa heard, but he turned around and he goes, "Man, I sure wished I was. I'd get over this in the morning." But that sense of humor and that it kept me motivated. So things, they are what they are.
They are what they are. My mom had MS from before when I was born, and she'd have good years, bad years, good days, bad days. And she returned to teaching ballet when I was, in my early 20s, and she was in her mid 50s, and she taught pretty much 5 to 6 days a week until she was 82.
Oh, wow.
And she had osteoporosis and the MS and all these things going. She was losing her teeth and her eyesight and her hearing. And she had a school here out in the desert and just kept going, just cranking out classes and challenging young dancers. And it kept her young and it kept her involved. And it was not easy for her. She just did it.
Well, and I don't say those things to sound like I'm bragging. I'm saying that because there's somebody out there that's listening, that's going through something similar. I just want them to know, don't give up. Find something positive in what happens to you.
Totally.
You could be an influence for somebody else. You know what I mean?
Right. And, you know, sometimes when we're in those challenging chapters of our lives, it can be hard to find that positive. But again, I just go, okay, well, the positive isn't presenting itself at this moment. I'll find it. I might find it in 10 minutes. I might find it in 5 years. But I'll find something to benefit, because every experience can teach you something.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever see?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you ever see that show, Life Goes On?
You know, I don't think I have.
Well, I think it took place in the 60s or the 70s, but they had a kid on there who was mentally disabled.
Oh, with Down syndrome. Yes.
Yeah, Down syndrome. Yes.
Back in the day, Life Goes On. Yes, now I remember.
But he was a great actor.
Corky.
Yes, that was it. That was
Named
it.
the character.
You know, listening to him act, you wouldn't think that he had Down syndrome. I mean, if you did physically just see him, he was a great little actor.
Oh yeah, there's, you know, and now there's more and more actors out there with Down syndrome. There was the girl on American Horror Story. There is a young guy on called The Midwife, and you know, and they're doing some pretty demanding work and doing it well, you know. So I think back when I was a kid in the late 60s and 70s, we just wrote people off, kind of went, you know, they have a mental disability. Well, we used harsher words than that, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
But
that was the times.
It was the times, you know. But now seeing, you know, these people with Down syndrome or people that are on the spectrum capable of, you know, wonderful and incredible things, it's hopefully making people rethink all of that and not just putting everyone into a basket like they did for centuries and institutionalized and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, some of these people, you know, like my nephew, are going to need help their entire lives of some sort. And but what they're capable of, at least now, is being explored, and someone's interested in it.
That's right. You can always find something positive if you just try.
Yep.
But anyway, I appreciate you coming on and giving me your time today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. This has just been fun.
I love having these conversations.
Yeah, well, you're good at them too. You know, I mean, you're honest and you're open and vulnerable, and you know, yeah. I'm gonna start watching your other podcast now. We got a new fan.
My wife says I talk too much, so that's why I do this.
Brilliant. I was told that my entire life. Don't stop.
Don't stop. Well, again, thank you for your time. And for those of you that are watching or listening to us, if you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. I hope you'll come back, and please subscribe. If you're regular, thank you for your support. Share this out. And till the next one, everyone, please take care. Please be kind to each other. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network